Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Ann, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's good to be in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd like to welcome all the people here for the first roundup. I also would like to congratulate that young man for receiving the big book tonight. And I hope you read it, and I hope you stay around Alcoholics Anonymous, because I'm going to tell you, you are in for an adventure of your life. Just hang tough, and I love what Charlie said. Just stay sober and don't die, and you become an old-timer in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just love that. It is so good to be here, and I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me here this weekend. I feel like I'm going to start talking real fast because I get real nervous, and you won't even be able to keep up with me. And I'll feel like it's a train chasing me here. I also would like to thank Bill for taking me off at the airport and being real patient with me. He kept writing letters and sending me stamp addressed envelopes to send back to him, and he never heard from me. Yeah. I just don't write. And so I told him that too. I said, I don't write. Sorry, but I got here. It's really, really neat, and everybody's just been wonderful. And I had a real great day today with Diane, and I just feel real honored. And like Diane said, to be asked to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous is really a privilege. It's really good to be with my friend Franklin. Yeah, Franklin always tells me that when I get to a podium of Alcoholics Anonymous, please don't scratch your nose. No, pick your nose or scratch your butt. Because he's very well known in these parts of the country. And I want you to know that I spent some time with Franklin, and he spent some time in my room, and I had to call security in the middle of the night because he tried to attack me with a dead weapon. If you get the opportunity to spend some time with Franklin, please spend some time with Franklin. Franklin has got a lot of wisdom, and I just love him. I just love him to death. I had the privilege of meeting Franklin many years ago in my early sobriety, and I just love to be with this old man. He's sober longer than God, you know. So that's enough of that. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1967. And I was 23 years of age when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I looked around AA, and I want you to know that everybody was really old. I mean, they were old. They were 35 and older. And I most certainly did not want to. They looked like they had one foot in the banana peel and the other foot in the grave, and I thought, my God, life is over, and I most certainly cannot be an alcoholic. I didn't know anything about projection, but I immediately projected into being 40. And I thought, I got to sit in these hard chairs until I'm 40 years of age. You've got to be kidding. And so I left Alcoholics Anonymous. I graduated. I failed to hear that in between that one meeting that I went to for a week was that you were not to drink. You don't drink in between meetings. And so I went out and I started to drink again. And I drank for 8 more months. And I'm truly, truly grateful for that 8 months. And I don't consider that I had a slip because I never got sober. And so I didn't have a slip. I just was not ready to do what was asked of me here in Alcoholics Anonymous. But there was a gal in that meeting that had taken me to those meetings. Her name was Carolyn C. And Carolyn kept calling me in that 8 months. And she called me about every 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or whatever time it was. She would give me a call. And I would tell her, I just had a couple of drinks today. And she would say to me, I'm not interested in your drinking. I want to be your friend. And God, I longed for a friend. But the price to be her friend meant I would have to come to these lousy AA meetings, and I wasn't an alcoholic. And I grab the phone and I think, I bet she wants to be my friend. The only reason she wants to be my friend is she wants me to go to those AA meetings, and I'm not an alcoholic. And so I decided what it was a recruiting thing. I would recruit somebody for you and get you off my case. So I called this friend of mine in Long Beach, and I said, Eileen, you're an alcoholic. And you ought to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said, okay. So I called this other gal back and I said, I found somebody for you. And she said, good, I'll come and get both of you. And that wasn't part of the deal. It really wasn't part of the deal, but this gal had a whole year and a half sobriety, and I couldn't say no to her. So she came and got both of us that night, and she took us to Anaheim, to the Anaheim Club out there in California. And after the meeting, there was another girl there, and she's still sober, and Sue had got sober very young. Sue got sober at 26 years of age, and Sue came up to me after that meeting, and she said, Annie, when are you coming back? And I said, I'm not an alcoholic. She is. Look at her. You know. And I walked out of that meeting. And you know, you'll hear it here in Alcoholics Anonymous that God works in strange and mysterious ways, and God works in strange and mysterious ways in my life. And every time I picked up a drink, I would hear that woman say, when are you coming back? And it didn't take too long for alcohol to take its toll on me. And when in that 8 months, I lost everything. And I'm not talking about material things because I didn't have any material things. I'm talking about everything inside of me. There wasn't very much to begin with. I didn't get a real good start in life, but it was all gone. Alcohol used it up. And I came back to you 8 months later on June 16th, 1968. I weighed 85 pounds. I was malnutritious, and my liver was shot. And I came back in here, and there was nowhere else for me to go. And I didn't know what you had here. I had no idea what you had here in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. All I knew was that I didn't want any more of what I had. In the last year, I've been having some problems with, well, it's okay now, but in the early part of this year, I was having some physical problems, and so I changed doctors, and I ended up with this doctor and ran a whole bunch of tests on me, and my liver was very damaged from alcohol. And so they ran some tests on me, and I didn't fail to mention that because I was a new doctor, and I just don't even think about it, to be honest with you, and I didn't mention that I was a member of AA, or, you know, so there was something wrong with my liver, and she came up and she said, you know, this doesn't usually happen. We're going to have to run some more tests because your liver is not functioning. And so then I just told her, I said, I'm a member of AA, and I have been sober a long time. And she said, well, this only happens, before I told her I was a member, she said, this only happens with people who are hard drinkers or heavy drinkers. She did not use the word alcoholism. So she said, if you drink, she said, you could die from this. And I looked at her and I said, no shit. I mean, really give me some information here that I don't already know, you know. I mean, when you people told me many years ago that I can die from this disease, I bought it. You know, I know that I can die from this disease. You know, there's a little yellow streak in the back of my back that gets wider every year, you know. I've watched some of my friends go back out there and do it. You know, I've watched them do it. And I've watched some of those new people that come in and they cannot seem to get it. And I don't know why. And it's not for me to question why, except that I get a great lesson in it. And they have to go back out there and drink and drink until they die. So when I came back to you, so I'm not worried about my liver. I just figure out if I don't drink, I'll be fine. One day at a time in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can do anything. And so when I came back in here on June 16th, like I told you, I came in here not with an attitude of gratitude. I came in here very angry, and that was the only emotion I knew, was a lot of anger. And I can tell you, stand here before you tonight, and I can tell you that you can stay sober under the best of circumstances and under the worst circumstances. And you can stay sober being angry in Alcoholics Anonymous. I stayed sober being angry for a long time. And I came in here in my first year of sobriety. I walked around and I gave everybody the finger. And I cussed you up one side and down the other. And in my home group, I used to tell them that God sent me to teach them patience and tolerance. And they used to look at me and think, my God, maybe he did, you know. And they knew when I walked into a meeting and I hear them talk about these, I am truly, truly grateful to the people that were there for me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know, in the last year, there's been a lot of stuff happening in my life, and because we continue to grow and continue to change here, all of those people, I always seem to have a tendency to run back to those people that were there for me when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need those people because they remember me when, and they've seen the changes. And I'm really, really grateful to those people because these were people who talked about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they talked about the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they talked about cleaning house. And I want you to know that I had one of the cleanest houses in Westminster until they found out what I was doing. And they said, that's not the kind of house cleaning we have in mind for you, you know. Yeah. They also talked about these 12 steps, and I wondered where they were. You know, I would sit in meetings and I think, where are those steps? And how often am I going to have to run up and down them? I thought that was part of the punishment for being an alcoholic, you know. And I don't know how to share me with you any other way but to share what I found in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you to know the steps have changed for me through the years. The same steps that I worked last year most certainly will not work for me this year because I'm not the same person I was last year. And I believe that. And I ran into a meeting and this man named Jerry Folick, and I just got to I hadn't seen Jerry or Gloria in about 4 years, and I became a real part of their family. And when I was very new in the program, I spent a lot of time with Jerry and Gloria. And I got to, his father-in-law just died of cancer last week. In fact, it was on Wednesday of this past week. And I got to go to Marty, and Marty had 40-some-odd years in sobriety. And I got to go over there, and I got to cut Martin's hair, and I got to cut his wife's hair. And I got to give back one more time to people that gave to me. You know, I will never be able to give back to you all the stuff you've given to me through the years here in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I ran into Jerry, and I ran up to that meeting when I was about 4 months sober, and I demanded to know where the steps were. I mean, I didn't ask, I demanded. And I said, where are those steps, Jerry? And how often do I have to run up and down them? And Jerry kind of looked at me real strange, but in those days everybody looked at me real strange, you know. I mean, you know, I used to call me Crazy Annie. And they used to call me Crazy Annie right to my face. They didn't go behind my back and say, here she comes, she's crazy. They said, here, Crazy Annie. And, you know, I mean, they weren't hiding it. I used to wear my hair sparkling sherry. I used to mix sparkling sherry and flame together, and I had bright red hair and I had a real loud mouth. And, so they saw me when I came in, and then the mouth would go. And so Jerry looked at me real strange, and he said, Annie, you go to a lot of meetings. And he said, if you listen, he said, tonight, he said, you listen to when chapter 5 is read. He said, and you will hear those steps. He said, and if you work those steps to the best of your ability in your life, he guaranteed me. He said, I guarantee you, your life will change. And I sat there and I listened to those steps, and I understand so well today when the old-timer tells the newcomer, bring the body, the mind will follow. Because I was 6 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous when all of me came here. I'll never forget, it was the first miracle I ever had. It was a spiritual awakening. I was sitting at the Garden Grove Club, and all of a sudden I pinched myself and I said, I'm here. And my mind was here, and my body was here, and I heard the 5, and I heard chapter 3, and I heard those traditions, and I heard what the man was saying from the podium. And I thought, that's what they mean, bring the body and the mind will follow. Because I would come to a meeting, and the first 5 minutes I'd be there, and then after, all of a sudden I would be tripping out there somewhere else. And so, and I keep coming back because I have to try and stay in that state of mind when I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a short memory. And so I listened to those steps, and the first step says we admit we're powers of alcohol and lives become unmanageable. Now I could admit I was powers of alcohol. I did not come to Alcoholics Anonymous because I drank too much coffee. I never drank the bloody stuff until I got here, you know. But I could not admit my life was unmanageable. I never managed my life. I roared right through it, you know, it's what I did. And I thought about something, I went and did it, and I suffered the consequences of it later. I have learned since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous that I should have gone into management. I would have been marvelous at it. And I have to go because I manage my husband, I manage my kids, and I manage all those girls I sponsor. And I have to go back and remember my life is unmanageable, and I got no business managing anybody else's life. And the second step says that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I came to believe when I was 9 months sober, because for the first 9 months of my sobriety, I sat out there and I white-knuckled it. And every time I went to a meeting and you talked about drinking, I wanted to drink. I was totally obsessed with drinking. And I could taste it and I was thirsty and I would think, why do they talk about drinking? Don't they know that I want to drink? Every time they mention alcohol, I want to drink. And I would sit there and my hair would stand on my neck and I would white-knuckle it. And when I was 9 months sober, I lost the obsession for alcohol. The obsession for alcohol was removed from me. And I really believe that was when I took the second step in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I really believe that for me to take up a drink would be totally insane for me to pick up a drink today. And God, again, removed that obsession from me. I've had a lot of bizarre behavior here in Alcoholics Anonymous, but not insane enough to pick up a drink. The third step, they want me to make a decision. I don't know about you and your decision making when you got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I could not make a decision. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, they want me to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to care of something I can't feel or touch. Now, if you was tall, dark, and handsome, had a nice car, I could make a decision real fast, you know. But if you're new here tonight, you're going to find out that you've joined a group of very narrow-minded people. And that's not the kind of higher power they had in mind for me. The kind of higher power they had in mind for me was not a man. And so I could not make a decision. But I knew that those meetings I was going to, that those people, there was something happening in those meetings. So I made a decision at that time to turn my will and my life over to care of those people in that meeting, not one individual, but all of those people in that meeting, because they were doing something with their lives that I couldn't possibly do. And that worked for me until I was about 2.5 years sober. And when I was 2.5 years sober, they took me to Orange County Psycho. And I said, you don't have to go to a psycho ward at 2.5 years sober, but I could not surrender, and I could not, and this is all a thing of surrendering and letting go. And I had surrendered my alcoholism when I got here, but I couldn't surrender all of me. And at that time in my life, I found something within me that my life has never been the same. I got in touch with that power within me, and I really believe that was when I did the third step in its entirety. Now, I'd like to give you the illusion that God and I have walked hand in hand all these years. And I hate to disappoint you because I like to go sightseeing. And so I kind of get a little stray here every now and then, you know. Anybody always brings me back to the center of where I'm supposed to be. And so I know where my source of power comes from today. And I know that my life is okay when I center myself back into that power that is within me, not out there, but within me. And my sponsor told me that for years. All you got to do is turn within, and you will touch with that power within yourself. Now, they want me to take a fourth step, and I wasn't going to take a fourth step. That was for those of you who drank for 15 or 20 years. You were much sicker than those of us who only drank for 10, and you really definitely needed a fourth and fifth step. And I let them know that, too. And I figured I was going to be an exception to the rule. I was not going to do a fourth and fifth step. And there was a guy in my home group, and I think every home group has one, and his name was John Brown. And John Brown was a great big guy, and his wife was my sponsor at the time. And he was one of these AAs that like to get in your face. You know those kinds? Yeah, those kind that got their finger going like this, and he comes right up to me when I was about 8 or 9 months sober. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey kid," he said, "you're going to have a birthday pretty soon, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am, John." And he said, "Have you done the fourth and fifth step?" And I said, "No, I haven't, John. And I'm not going to." And he said, "If you're not going to do the fourth and fifth step," he said, "the night of your birthday," he said, "I'm going to announce it all over Huntington Beach for them not to listen to you, that you're not working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want you to know I took my first inventory under pressure. I was pressured into that inventory. It wasn't an inventory that I did because I wanted to do it. I was terrified, and I just knew that was the reason why they called me Crazy Annie, and I knew that they know that I was crazy because I wasn't working the lousy steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I went home that night, and I went out to 50 drugs the next day, and I picked up all this stuff. I picked up a lot of paper, and I picked up a lot of pens, and I didn't drive for the first 4.5 years of my sobriety because I couldn't take that stupid little test. And I want to tell you, I don't know if you got the same problem here, but we have it in our area where people come in and they say, "I don't have a car, and so I can't get to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous." Or the DMV has taken my license and I don't, I can't drive and I don't get away to Alcoholics Anonymous. I never had a problem getting to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, nor did I have a problem getting home from a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're new here tonight and you've got that problem, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to solve it for you because I solved it for myself. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I found out real early that we're full of guilt. We're loaded with guilt. Just loaded with it. And so they give you a list of names. They used to give a list of names in my home group, and I used to go down that thing and I'd know who was sober a few days longer than me or a few days less than me. And I would go down that list and I would say, "If you don't come and pick me up and I die from this disease, it's going to be your fault." So I never had a problem getting to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nor did I have a problem getting home from a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I want to tell you, don't try that with old-timers. Okay? Because somewhere along the line, as you stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, we lose that guilt. We start working on it. And I tried it with an old-timer, and he told me I could walk or ride my bike or take a bus, but he wasn't going to come and pick me up. Yeah, but you get those newcomers, and they're so full of guilt, because you're full of guilt too. And so they will come and get you. So I never had a problem getting to a meeting. So I got over to Lois's house, and I sat down at our kitchen table, and I handed her all this paper. And I gave her this paper, and I gave her these pens, and she kind of looked at me, and she said, "What is all this for?" And I said, "Well, I want to tell you all about it. You start writing." And, I picked the most narrow-minded people in the world. I got them all in my home group. And so she said, "Honey, I've done my inventory." And I said, "Now you get to do mine." And we argued. And so the only thing I could come back was, "You're supposed to do that. That's what sponsors are supposed to do." And she said, "Not this sponsor." I look back on that time in my life and I realized that for the first time in my life I was going to start being disciplined. For the first time in my life I was going to made do things that I didn't want to do. If I could have found one of you to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have made you do it. I tried desperately to get somebody to work these 12 steps. I didn't want to do it. I wanted someone else to do it. That way I wouldn't have to be responsible when it all got screwed up. It would have been your fault, not mine. Because I was a great blamer. I blamed everybody. And I'm glad today that you didn't work those steps for me. because I really believe that I tailor-made a program that fits Annie, and it fits Annie real well. And I like the way my program is today. And my program probably wouldn't fit anybody out there in the room, but it fits me. You know, and I've had to take a lot of scenes and I've had to do a lot of stuff in order for it to fit me comfortably inside. I went home that night, and the next day I called her for the next couple of weeks and argued with her about this inventory. And I swear to God, I think she had a machine, and she'd say, right, and I'd just hang up the phone. And so finally I had to tell her. And I want you to know that this has absolutely nothing to do with my alcoholism. Nothing to do with my alcoholism. It's got to do with the setting I came from and where I came from, and because of people that did not know what was wrong with me. And I couldn't tell her that there was absolutely no way that I could do that inventory, and I really, really believed I was going to be an exception to that rule. Because I couldn't read, nor could I write when I came to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I know that has nothing to do with my problem with alcoholism. And people like me don't get to be at podiums, or don't get to be sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was told, Lois, I said, I can't do it. And I was a secret that I was going to take to the grave with me because I'd worked real hard and hiding that. And it's because of the setting I came from. And Lois looked at me and she said, I don't care how you do it, honey, but you do it. And I made a lot of marks on that inventory, and I've taken many, many inventories since that inventory. And I made a lot of marks. And in steps, in the 12 and 12 and step 6, it says that wishful thinking is a character defect. And to this day, I wished I had kept that inventory, because there is absolutely no comparison to the girl that took that inventory to the woman that stands before you tonight. I graduated in 1983 from high school. Now I know you're not impressed, but I was impressed, and I want you to know that everybody in Orange County was impressed. I was 15 years sober, and they were so impressed and they were so grateful that I was not going to go on to college. You know? They just could not take another English class if they had to. And they took a sigh of relief and said, thank God she isn't going to go to college. We don't have to go through that one with her. Yeah, I do know how to read and I do know how to write today. And that has come to me because of Alcoholics Anonymous. It took you a long time to calm what was inside of me that was always enraged and always so scared and always so fragile. You had to calm it, you had to nurture it, and thank God for the women in Alcoholics Anonymous. They were able to do that for me. I am truly, truly grateful that alcohol does not choose its victim. It really doesn't care. Whether you have an education or you don't have an education, or you're overeducated or you're undereducated. If you have the disease of alcoholism, you have the disease of alcoholism. And because of that, there were school teachers that came into my life in that time of my life that took an interest in my case and took me to some of those doctors, those educational doctors, those psychiatrists. And I want you to know that my head has been examined more ways than I care to tell you. I've had more things prodded in my brain for them to find out what was wrong with me. And they had all kinds, I've got tapes, I've got all kinds of little certificates, little papers, what they diagnosed me as. And what they came up with is a thing called dyslexia. And I see things backwards. And they said that I don't perceive things like other people. I even tell my story backwards. And they tell me that alcoholism is a disease of the perception. Now, you see, I combine mine real honestly. I don't know what the rest of you are doing here tonight. You know, I went to Lois with that inventory, and I did that inventory with her, and I'm absolutely totally positive that she pointed out some of my character defects. I want you to know that I had no character defects when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. No character defects when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what character defects were. You know, it's really difficult to have character defects when you've not got no bloody character to start with, you know. Now, I want you to know that God has removed those character defects in me that stand in the way of me hurting my fellow man or me hurting me. But I want you to know that I got a lot of character defects. I want you to know that for some reason or another, God has not rendered me white as snow yet in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's some of my character defects I like, because that tells me I'm getting character here in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and God only knows I need some character here. I want to share a little one of my character defects, and that is when I got sober, I had a tremendous stealing problem. Now, I don't think we've got any thieves out here in this meeting. You all look like you're pretty respectable people. And if you've never been a thief, you don't know what I'm talking about, because if you've never been an alcoholic, you don't know what I'm talking about either. You know, the palms of your hands get real sweaty, and you start shaking, and it used to be just to swallow away, now it's just to steal away. And you kind of get that high. It's magic, you know, and you just start shaking all over, and you just got to do it. And so God removed that from me, because for many years He took that obsession. It was total obsession. I never stole anything until I got sober. And I want to tell you, if you're new here, there's somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous who'll always have an answer for you for that. You know, they'll always be able to tell you why you're doing what you're doing. And when I was 17 years sober, I quit smoking. Now, if I was to quit drinking like I'd done smoking through the years, I would never have made Alcoholics Anonymous. I am now not smoking, but I am not stealing yet. I went to the store today. I didn't tell Diane that she'd have to watch me. But I didn't walk out with a rack either, so we're safe. When I was 17 years sober, I quit smoking for another time, and I ended up, I'm up at the checkout stand, and I get some dentine gum. I see the dentine gum. I got $200 in my wallet. I want you to know. My head says, we're going to take the gum. No, we're not going to take the gum. Yes, we are going to take the gum. No, we're not going to take the gum. Yes, we are, so we take the gum. Now, the gum was all at 55 cents, right? And so I thought, my God, here we go again, And the next time I steal a stalk of celery. And if you learn anything, if I've learned anything here in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've learned to rationalize and justify. And I've learned to rationalize real good. You see, all of those old Catholic things come up, even though I think I resolved a lot of them. I will tell you that it's a greater sin to waste than it is to steal. And I only needed one stalk of celery to make a tuna salad. I didn't need the whole bloody bunch. So I take the stalk of celery, and Mary Reagan's my sponsor, and I go home and I tell Mary I stole the stalk of celery, and Mary said, you got to go to the produce man, you got to make an amends. And I said, no, Mary, I'm not going to the produce man. I ain't going to make no amends to the produce man. That step says we admitted God to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, and I'm not going to the produce man and make an amends to him. And she said, well, you're going to have to do something about it. You're not going to look real good if you get up in front of one of these judges that's an AA in Orange County Court, and it's going to really give us a bad name here. You got to take care of this problem. And so I shared that somewhere, and this little old lady came up to me and she said, I'm so grateful that you shared that. She said, I like to steal radishes. And I told her, I said, let's get together after this meeting and we'll go steal a whole salad. So I went to the manager at the store and I told him my problem. And he said, well, what do you like to steal? And I said, I like to steal everything. And I said, would you walk around the store with me? I like to shop early in the morning. And I said, until I get over this obsession, it's an obsession. And I said, and I will get over, I'm working on it, So he walked around the store, and I'm surprised he didn't get the guys with the white coats to come and get me, because on a Thursday morning I go in and I say, I don't have it today, I'm okay, I'm safe, I walk around your store. And so this one day I'm up at the checkout stand, and this guy and I are on name basis. His name is Paul, and Paul was talking to me, and I said, I forgot my gum, and he said, you quit smoking, Ann? I said, yeah, I did. And he said, I quit drinking. I said, you did? And he said, I said, I quit drinking some years ago. And he said, do you know Bill W.? And I said, do I know Bill W.? Immediately I knew that you were watching me. Immediately. I want you to know I will never steal again from Alpha Beta as long as I'm sober. I just knew that you had set out to watch me. So I haven't been stealing. I keep turning that one over to God. I did go back to smoking, but I haven't been smoking now for the last 8 months, but I haven't been to too many stores because I'm scared that I will get obsessed with the stealing. I think I'm going to have a sexual obsession instead of stealing. I think I'll try that one, for a change. So that's one of my character defects I have here, folks. My character defect 7, shortcomings. My shortcomings don't show up in Alcoholics Anonymous very much today. They did when I was really new, and I've come to meetings when I was new to you, and I would tell you all the things I was doing at home, and it was absolutely totally insane. And you would pat me on the back, and you would say I was doing okay, and I would go home, and I'd take my A coat off, and I'd go in that house. And I really believed that was the last place I got to work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is in my home. And I would go in that house, and I was an absolute screaming, raving maniac. I stopped chasing my husband with butcher knives when I was 4.5 years sober. When my 3-year-old came and said, Mommy, I'll get the knife for you, It was kind of like someone throwing cold water in your face, and you start thinking, well, what's wrong with this program? But I'm supposed to be working here, I'm supposed to be getting better, I'm ready for sainthood. And my kid is now going to help me kill her father, And so I had to take a look at that time of my life. I made a list of people I'd harmed, and I put me on top of that list. And even today, it's much easier when you come to me and you tell me some of your slimy, sneaky things that you're doing here, and I'm able to look at you and I will not judge you, and I will direct you to a step, and I will love you, and I will know that there's something that you have to learn in this. But when I do the same thing, I have those expectations because I've got X number of years of sobriety, I should be somewhere else. And I have to remind myself that this is a spiritual journey. And I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous to get good. You know, when I got here, they said, you're not here to get good. If you want to get good, you go to church. You're a sick person trying to get well. And there's lots of stuff that needs to be worked on, and I have to keep coming here. And I have to have people like Franklin in my life that I can go to, and people like Diane in my life that I can go to, and share some of my things so that I can get some direction and do what God wants me to do the best. You know, and I have to do that. And I have to always remember that I must forgive me. I must forgive me because I'm a human being, and I'm going to make human errors here in this life. I like to tell you I take a daily inventory. And I don't take a daily inventory. I don't take a written daily inventory like it says in that step. But I want you to know there isn't a day that goes by that I don't look over my day. And I need to promptly admit that I'm wrong. I will promptly admit I'm wrong. But there was a time in my sobriety when I was doing Alcoholics Anonymous, I could not have promptly admit anything. My attitude was, screw you and the donkey you rode up on. And there was a guy in my home group and I hated him. And his name was Johnny. And I hated John Esky. I just hated him. And I would sit up nights thinking about how I was going to get John Esky. And I would pace that floor and I would say, he'll say this and I'll say that, and we'll go on back and forth. And I get down to the meeting, and this one night this guy told me, he said, they don't care. They go home and they go to bed and they go to sleep, and they don't even give you another thought. And that upset me even more. I thought, how dare they go home and go to bed and go to sleep? How dare they when I'm up all night long thinking about them? And so I know what the old-timers do today. They like to give resentments, you see. And I like to give resentments today. I really do. You know, and let you stay up all night long and I go home and go to bed and go to sleep and I don't give you another thought. And, you know, so I learned that one real good. There's step 11, solitary prayer meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. Praying only for the knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry that out. You know, that was a real difficult step for me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew what medication was. I did not know what meditation was. But I would listen to those old-timers, and they were real quick to tell you in those meetings, and they would sit there and they'd tell you how they meditated. And for years, I used to carry the big book under my arm. I used to hold it under my arm. I used to think it was going to up through my arm and into my head, and I was going to get all this wonderful knowledge. That's how I was going to learn all this wonderful stuff. And I'd sit in this old chair, and I'd close my eyes, and they'd say that you close your eyes and you clear your mind, and I could never clear my mind. I could not clear my mind. And I'd sit in this chair, this old red stuffed chair I had, and I'd close my eyes, and I'd get into all these sexual fantasies, far out sexual fantasies. I could use some of those today. Or I'd fall asleep. You know, I just fall asleep. So I had to give up meditation. It was affecting my life. You know, it was not working the way they said it was going to work for me. And I went to somebody one day and I asked him, I said, what is meditation? And he said, the definition for meditation is in Webster's dictionary. And the definition for meditation is a higher plane of thinking. Now when you're 8 and 9 months sober and your mind is still in the gutter, it's really difficult to have a higher plane of thinking. I'd like to think today, do I have a higher plane of thinking due to work on that step on a daily basis? I can stand here before you tonight and I can tell you for the last 2.5 years, every single day I do that step. Because every single day, I used to do it 5 days and give God the weekends off, you know. And someone said God was probably grateful he got the weekends off. And then sometimes I get mad at him and I wouldn't talk to him at all, and he probably was glad I didn't talk to him either. But I had do it regardless of how I'm feeling, and I do it every single day for the last 2.5 years. And I believe what the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, because David touched on this today. And it says that I have a daily reprieve contingent on my spiritual maintenance. And I really believe that if I don't expand and I don't grow in that area, that I am doomed to go out there one more time. And I have to continue to do that because I believe what it says, and it says in the ABCs, that no human power could relieve us of our alcoholism, but God could and would if you sought. So I must continue to seek God. I must continue to do that here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I come to you because when I come to you, you really bring my spirit and you really replenish it. And I am no longer thirsty when I keep coming back, because I gotta keep coming back to give back to you what you so freely gave to me many years ago. The 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. I want you to know that the newcomer is the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous. Without the newcomer, there will be no Alcoholics Anonymous. But I want you to know that I need the old-timer in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you saw the countdown here tonight. And there's not many old-timers in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I need the old-timer in Alcoholics Anonymous to let me know that I'm going to go through the things that I'm going to get through, and I'm going to stay sober, because you see, when I was new, I had this illusion. And this illusion was that if you had X number of years of sobriety, you got it all together. And my sponsor said she got it all together once, and she forgot where she put it. You know. So you don't get to get it all together. It just gets different, and you're able to deal with it in a different way. And I need that old timer to let me know that I can get through some of those things. Because you see, I thought I would never feel again. And I thought that nothing would ever happen again. And things happen. Our children go wrong. We get divorced and people die and people leave. And we must not drink here. Because for me to drink is for me to die. And I don't want to die because I'm now finally catching on to what living is all about. And I must stay here, closer to you here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I told you I do everything backwards, and now I'm going to give you a real quick run through of what it used to be like. And I give you a lot of information already, but I want to tell you what it used to really be like for Annie. And I go back to being very, very young. And I go back to being when I was about 6 years of age. And I simply tell you this part of my life simply because I really believe that I was getting ready for alcohol way before I ever picked it up. I really believe for me that if I had not found alcohol, I would have gone absolute stark raving mad. Alcohol saved my sanity until I found the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and through you people and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and a God of my understanding, you've made me a whole person here. And I'm Irish and I'm Catholic. That gave me 2 strikes against me right off the bat. And I'm not one of those Irish who's never seen the skies of Ireland. I lived there for 17 years of my life. And I come from a large family. I'm a family of 10. I'm the 8th child out of 10. And my father's an alcoholic. And I don't know that my father's an alcoholic until I come to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I start listening to you people. And I start putting all this data together. And my father would get drunk on a Friday night or a Saturday night. He'd go to Flanagan's. And he'd come home and he would beat on my mother. And that is a custom in my country. It's nothing. I mean, it went on all over. It wasn't just at our house. I used to think it was just at our house. It's just that's the way it was. It's a tradition. Keep that woman in shape. And my father even sent my husband a big blackthorn stick to beat me, you know. I thought, it's the other way at our house. I beat him. Worked against him. My father would beat on my mother, and I remember as a child, I'd be upstairs in that room, and I put the pillow over my head, and I would be praying to that God that I was absolutely terrified of. And I would be asking him, please, let him kill her, or maybe she will die, or maybe I will die. And I got the next morning, I had all these things going on inside of me, and what they were was guilt and remorse. And I was a bad child for thinking all these bad things of my parents. Now, I went to Catholic school, not because you're rich, simply because that's all there is in the part of Ireland I came from. And people have asked me, how come you didn't get an education? I used to say it's because I had frustrated Irish nuns. I want you to know that I used to have psychiatrists cry about some of the horrible things that happened to me as a young child and going to Catholic school in Ireland. I was sitting with Mary Reagan one day and I was telling Mary about all these terrible, terrible things that happened to me. And Mary looked at me and she said, honey, she said, you really had it bad. She said, you know, I had German nuns and they were trained by Hitler. So you see, there's always somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous who's going to have a little bit worse than you. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that the brainstorms are not for us. And I had my first brainstorm in the 2nd grade. I decided I was so tired of this nun hitting me every morning. I went for catechism. And every morning I could not remember because there was so much commotion. There was so much stuff that went on in that house. It was a very small house and there was a lot of anger and there was a lot of emotion in that house. And I could not, I would shut off, and because of my dyslexia and because of my fear level, I was riddled with fear for years and years and years. Well into my sobriety, fear controlled my life. And I decided that I was going to get this nun this particular morning. And I went into the classroom and I sat down and she asked me the question. There was kind of a little pillar hole in this room where I was sitting, kind of pole, and I couldn't answer, and she grabbed a hold of me and pulled me out from that seat, and I was fighting her. And she pulled me out, and I upped and hit her, like any little 2nd grader can hit somebody across the face. There was a draft petition in this particular classroom, and Mother Superior happened to be teaching there that day, and she just happened to turn her head, and she just happened to see me hit her. And I stood there in front of 30 kids and Mother Superior and said, I didn't do it. You know, it wasn't me. And I was to do that until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it didn't matter what I got caught doing. I would stand, and I would look at you, and I would say, I didn't do it. Because I could not take responsibility for me. I could not take responsibility for my actions or my behavior. They took me out of there and moved me to another grade, and I assumed I was going to have to pray, and I always say 3 weeks, and it probably was a week, but it felt like 3 weeks to me. And I was kneeling on these hardwood floors in front of these 2 big statues, and I got tired of kneeling on these hardwood floors because they had great big knots in the wood, and I went back up and I had to apologize to that class. And I remember standing in front of all those kids in that classroom. I remember Sister having that round pointer and she's kind of nudging it in my back. And I remember lowering my eyes as she hit me real hard to say it out loud. And I remember saying, I'm sorry. But I remember something else happening inside of me, and what happened inside of me was you against me. And it was always you against me from that time on. I left school, and my memories of school was stuck in dunces corners and put with big D's in a hat and put outside the door. And I remember this one nun beating the heck out of me one day, and she said, we are going to break her spirit. And you know, they almost did break my spirit. And I left that school. I was 13 years of age, and I went to work in a factory. And that's what we do in my country. And I had all those hopes and dreams that every other girl had. I was going to find me a nice Irish fella and get married and have kids. And I want you to know that I am truly, truly grateful that God doesn't answer stupid prayers. You know? I found boys and I found alcohol all in the same week. And my first drink was half a bottle of cognac. And this guy told me if I drank this half bottle of cognac, he would give me a pound note, which was equivalent to $3 in your money at that time. And the deal was I was to drink this half bottle of cognac and I wasn't to stop. And I drank that half a bottle of cognac and I didn't stop. And I went into the bathroom and I got very, very, very sick and I threw up and I came back out and I said, give me my money. I would have sold my soul at 13 for $3. And I went up to the bar and I ordered me another drink, because if you know anything about my country and you know anything about our customs, if you know how to name it, they will serve it to you. And I went up and I ordered me another drink and I continued to drink. And I can tell you exactly what happened for me. And what happened for me was that knot that was in the pit of my gut from the time I was 6 years of age was no longer there. And it didn't matter whether my father beat on my mother. It didn't matter whether I had no education. It didn't matter whether there was no food in that house. I found the secret to living. Now, I didn't drink every day from that time on, but I drank at every opportunity from that time on. By the time I was 17 years of age, my father made a decision for me. I had absolutely nothing to do with this decision. He decided I should come to California because the streets were paved with gold. Now, I've been almost 29 years in California, and I'm still looking for those streets paved with gold. And my aunt took me up to Dublin, and I do have some people in my family that know how to take care of these kind of things and fill out all these papers and got me ready to come to this country. And I remember, and I didn't know that this was alcoholic thinking at this time either. I knew that once I got away from this family, it was going to be different. And that's alcoholic thinking. It was always going to be different somewhere else. Now, if I could have left me home, I would have had a wonderful time. But I brought me with me, you know, and me always got into trouble. And so I remember I was never going to tell a soul I was Irish, ever going to tell a soul I was Irish. Again in my life, nobody was ever going to find out that I was Irish. I had a brogue like I stepped off the boat, but nobody was going to know that I was Irish. Now, I want you to know I like being Irish. I really do. I really like being Irish today, because I really believe that if it wasn't for us Irish, you could hold your AA meetings in a phone booth. I know that a lot of you will kind of object to that. You don't have to be Irish in order to become a member. It just helps. My sponsor told me that the reason why God created whiskey was he was afraid the Irish were going to take over the world, so he thought he'd kind of stop them a little bit. I remember getting on that plane, I remember drinking champagne, I remember the feeling, and the feeling was freedom. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be free more than anything in my life. I wanted to be free. I didn't know that that feeling of freedom was false freedom from alcohol. And I was never to feel that feeling again until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it didn't happen for me in my first 90 days. My freedom has come very, very slow here in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I came and I stayed with a family up in Palos Verdes, and I was real impressed. I was really impressed with this family. I was impressed with her home, and I was impressed with her bar and her house. She had a beautiful bar. And these were people I did go back and I did make an amends to. They were very, very good people to me. And they loved me very, very much. They just didn't know what to do. And they were very grateful that I found the fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous. They didn't know what hit them when I arrived at their house. And I used to drink this woman's 108 proof vodka. And then I'd fill a bottle up with water. And she could never understand how come she couldn't get a buzz on when she was drinking that good water that she was buying. And these people were good to me. This woman wanted me to go to school, and I remember her taking me down to Redondo Beach High, and I remember I used to shake a lot. And when I drank and got drunk, I used to break out in welts. I was really allergic to alcohol, and I used to break out in these big welts all over, and I'd have to sit in baths of cool water to try and get these welts off my body. And I was shaking a lot. But when you've got a lot of secrets and you're hiding and you're lying and you're cheating and you've got to hide a lot of stuff and you don't want anyone to know anything about you, and that's the freedom I have here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't go down alleys anymore. I'm free today. My life's an open book today. If there's anything you want to know about my life, I will be glad to tell you.
because I don't want to have to hide things today. Not the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've lived that way. I know how to live that way. And this woman, I couldn't tell her that I couldn't read and I couldn't write and I couldn't take messages for her. And she took me down to Redondo Beach High, and I remember standing outside that office, and I couldn't go in because I was terrified of my peers. And I couldn't be in that office, and I couldn't fill out those papers. And I was standing at that door, and I couldn't tell you what I was experiencing. I was going into a catatonic state of mind with absolute sheer fear that someone was going to find out something about me. And I slid down that door, and that woman looked at me, and she said, "You don't have to do this." And I didn't have to do this. And I ran around Redondo Beach Pier, and I ran around all people who used a lot of hard drugs. And I never got involved in drugs. And I really believe the only reason I didn't get involved in drugs was simply because I was absolutely, totally terrified that if I was caught, I would be deported back to Ireland, and my father would meet me at Dublin Airport and kill me first and ask questions later. My father caught me smoking when I was 10 years of age, and as I was standing there and he's running that cigarette down my mouth, I mean literally putting it down my throat, and I'm telling him I'm not smoking. And he took a dog leash to me, and he whipped me, and he kicked me, and my mother ran in and she said, "Jack, you're going to kill her." And he said, "Yes, I'm going to kill her. She's no good and never will be any good." And they couldn't let me out of that house for a couple of weeks because I was so badly beaten. I was black and blue. I was whipped like a dog, that's what I was. And I don't know what they would have done to them, but I wasn't allowed out of that house for a couple of weeks. And that memory stayed with me, and I knew that if I was deported out of this country, that man would meet me at Dublin Airport, and he would kill me first and ask questions later. And I knew down uptown at that time of my life. I want you to know, today I had a shower. And I just feels real good. And I tell you this because I don't ever want to forget there was a time in my life that I didn't take showers. And today my hair is all fixed. And today my makeup's all in the right place. My eyebrows are not on my cheek. And I'm clean. I'm clean today. And that's not the way it has always been for Annie. And God, don't ever let me forget. Don't ever let me forget because I don't ever want to be condemned to relive any minute of my past. And I used to walk along Catalina Avenue. And I walk along Catalina Avenue. And I give all the cars a finger, and I cussed at everybody, and I didn't fit, and there's a horrible feeling of not fitting. I could not seem to fit anywhere. I didn't fit with you Americans because all you ever talked about was education. I didn't have any education, so how could I fit with you? And now whether you talked about it or not, in my mind, that's what I heard. And I didn't want anything to do with the Irish because all they did was change addresses, and I didn't want to be Irish anyway. And so I walked along Catalina Avenue to wear rubber go-aheads, and a pair of jeans that were way before they were fashionable, and a T-shirt, and I used to carry a paper sack. Now, I don't know if you got any Ripple drinkers here, but I used to drink Ripple. I drank everything and anything anybody ever bought me, but when I bought, I drank Ripple. And if you've never got drunk on Ripple, I guarantee you've missed a trip. It was 37 cents a bottle and came in a long neck bottle, and you could get two drunks for the price of one when you drank Ripple, because the next day all you do is drink water and you get drunk all over again, you know. And I walk along to Catalina Avenue, and I took the lesser two evils. I start running around with Mexicans. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Mexicans down this part of the country, but we have them in California. And my best friend, the president of Alcoholics Anonymous, is Angie. And I know probably some of you have heard Angie. And Angie and I have been friends for 19 years, and we talk to each other every Monday morning. She calls one week, and I call her the next week, and we talk at least for an hour every week. And we're very, very close, and she's really my sister. I love her very, very much. And Angie and I years ago sat down and we kind of dissected the two nationalities and what we came up with. The only difference between the Irish and Mexicans is that we ate potatoes and they ate beans. You know, they drink hard, love hard, and beat the hell out of you on Saturday night whether you need it or not. And I got involved with a group of Mexicans over there in Torrance, Lamita, and I learned to speak Spanish like a native to the tongue. And I'd long left these people, and I couldn't hold a job. And these people, this guy drank in the morning. I only drank in the afternoon, and he introduced me to the morning drink. And it was a very, very exciting time in my life. It was getting beat up and jumping out of cars. And it was just really exciting times that we get into all of this wonderful stuff that we give up in order to become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, Norm Alfie, God rest his soul, Norm always says that when you drink, don't think. And I got to thinking one day, I was taking several geographicals from the top of that hill all the way over to Gardena. And I got to thinking, a half a gallon of Red Mountain, I got to thinking that this guy ought to marry me. And I hitchhiked a ride over to Torrance Lamita, and I found him. And I want you to know you could smell me way before you could see me, and I proposed to him. And he laughed at me, and he laughed, and he said he wouldn't marry me if I was handed to him on a silver platter. And I don't know how you handle rejection. I don't handle it real well. And my next thought was, I'm going to kill you, son of a bitch, because one less Mexican in this world, we'll all be better off. And so I've always been able to do a lot of things under a lot of false courage and behind booze. And I got him in the car, and I got him on the Harbor Freeway, and I turned the wheel of the car on the Harbor Freeway, and I took 25 feet of guardrail and went down 30 feet in the embankment, and I thought I killed me a Mexican. Now, what I learned out of that, folks, is if you're going to kill one Mexican, you got to kill the whole family. You know, for some reason or another, they don't take too kindly to you messing with the people, even if they do call you Annie the Irish Mexican. I also learned that when you run with Mexican people, you don't ever yell cop. And I yelled cop one time, and I was downtown Long Beach, and I was in a phone booth. You used to have phone booths in California, and they don't have them anymore. And I was in that phone booth, and he kicked me, and I yelled uncle. Now, you see, I have no illusions, not something missing here in my head. Normal people go home, and they get away from things like this. I crawl out of that phone booth, I go to the bar, and I said, let's have a drink, and we'll discuss this. You know, I learned in that inventory that I will stay somewhere forever, because I'm absolutely, totally terrified of being abandoned. I'm absolutely, totally terrified of being left alone. And I've had to learn, I had to experience those feelings here at Alcoholics Anonymous when I was new, and people would come into my life and they would go out of my life and go on to do what they had to do. And I would go through that terrible feeling of being abandoned here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I know today that you did not abandon me. I know today that what you do is there's a bond formed here, and if you were to come back into my life, you will come back into my life. And I ended up, there was another thing I had going for me at this time in my life was that I antagonized, and it talks about my type of personality in the 12 and 12 and step 8. In fact, bringing out the final character defects in other people, I was very good at that, and I still am very good at that. I don't mean to do it, but I do it. And I ended up, I wanted somebody to hit me, and to hit me hard enough to kill that part of me that kept screwing up. And I learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you kill that part of me, you kill all of me. Because that's the part of me that you love here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I ended up in Arizona with this man, and I ended up one more time, it seems the best period of my life, all I did was just drunk. I couldn't hold a job, and I was just drunk all the time. And I ended up I was drunk, and I got loud mouth, and I said things I shouldn't have said one more time to this guy's wife, and I don't even remember what I said. And I went out to the back seat to the car to pass out, and 4 Mexican men came out after me. And they pulled me out of the back seat of the car, and they worked me over, and they worked me over good. And this one guy said, we'll go get the truck, and we'll run over her. And the guy gets to get the truck, and as these 3 guys that got me down on this dirt road, it was in Prescott, Arizona. And as the truck comes and the headlights are coming, and these 3 guys jump and they ran, and to this day I don't know where I got the sense to roll off that dirt road, but I rolled off that dirt road. And my face looks like that trucker's run over here. And I'm somewhere in Arizona, I get up off of that dirt road, and I walk along the road, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get back to Los Angeles. And I need a drink. God, I need a drink. And I'm the type of drunk, I live by 4 mailboxes, a Ralph's Market, or some sign. And the guy comes along and he picks me up. We go to a liquor store and we pick up a bottle of wine. We go to a dirty motel, and that's how I learned to solve my problems. I have no idea how to solve my problems, so I come to Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, you talked a great deal about dying. I know what it's like to die. I know what it's like to die when you're out there sitting in meetings and they tell you that you have to let go of all your old ideas, and I would literally just die inside. I think, my God, I can't let go of all my old ideas. Because I knew where my old ideas took me. I did not know where your new ideas were going to take me. I will ever be truly grateful to those people in Alcoholics Anonymous that knew how far down that scale I had gone. That knew that they would have to spoon feed me Alcoholics Anonymous in order for me to say. I am truly grateful that I tried your new ideas, and I tried them because I would have missed a whole lot. But it took a long time. You just don't come out of a dark room and all of a sudden start to trust people here in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I also know what it's like to die when you're out there drinking. I ended up in this little room over in Gardena, and I used to call it my 4x4, and I want you to know the only time I was ever free of what was going on inside of me was under the influence of alcohol. I was absolutely, totally terrified. Absolutely terrified. And I would start drinking to get up the courage to go down the hall to take a shower. I used to say it was a 4x4. I had a hot plate and had a sink, and I had cockroaches and a gal named Annie. And that room was $50 a month, and I couldn't make that $50 a month to pay for that room. And you had to go down the hall to take a shower, and I couldn't get down the hall to take a shower because I was plagued with this terrible fear. And I would fly, and I'd start drinking to get the courage to go down the hall to take a shower, and I'd always overshoot the mark. And I'd never get down the hall to take a shower. I remember one night lying in this bed in this room, and I remember sucking off a vodka bottle, and I remember screaming as loud as anybody could scream, saying, God, please send me somebody to understand. I want one lousy person to understand me. I didn't ask for rooms full of people to understand me. I wanted one lousy person to understand me. I just felt there was nobody in this whole world that could possibly understand me. And I got out of that bed and I put on those old pair of rubber go-aheads and old pair of jeans and I head out in that street one more time. And I want you to know I always found somebody. I want you to know it always lasted for a very brief time. I want you to know that my life got in the way. I want you to know I got beat up one more time and I left to my own self. And I would end back up in that room and two people come into my life at that time. And there was one little girl, her name was Carol Poole, another girl's name was Ann Wilson. And Carol taught me how to write my name. It took a long time. I used to think she was so much younger than me. She probably was a couple of years younger than me. And she spent hours teaching me to write my name. And this other girl moved me out of there and moved me to Long Beach. I had a paper sack and I had a green card and that's all I owned in the whole world. And I'm a girl that came off of Beacon Street in San Pedro. And David mentioned Skid Row. I was in Skid Row for 8 months and there's no way I could have lasted any longer than 8 months. And it was in Anaheim Street in Long Beach. And I did a little time down there and while I was down there, the skinny, puny little guy came down into that area. And I want you to know you could smell me one more time way before you could see me. And he asked me to go out, and I asked him to get a job, and he said he didn't work. And I said, I don't date guys who don't work. And, I had a lot of nerve in those days. And he went out and got himself a job, and he's been working ever since. I've been married to this man for 25 years. Now, I'd like to give you the impression that we have this wonderful, wonderful marriage. People in AA just get tired of listening to the saga of my marriage. I don't talk about him very much today. I will tell you that we have this strange and beautiful relationship. He's strange and I'm beautiful. And so you can kind of sum it up wherever you want to sum it up there. I feel that I have found myself in Al-Anon meetings, and thank God for the Al-Anon women. And I just love the Al-Anon meetings. I make one Al-Anon meeting a week because I found myself married to somebody that likes the bottle. And I don't like it, but I don't talk about it because I'm not ready to do anything about it at this time in my life. And I tell you, my head wants to do it, but every time I try to do it, it feels like my feet are in cement and I can't move forward. And so I just have to do what I have to do. And I just keep going to meetings and I keep doing what is right in front of me here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I sponsor a great many people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a lot of history with this man, and I got a lot of history in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got a lot of people that love me and are pulling for me. And I know that when the right answer comes, it will come, and I will be able to do it, and I will do it with dignity, and I will do it when it's time to do it, when God is ready to move, and not a minute sooner. Because every time I try to do it, it's not time, and when it's not time, it just doesn't work. I ended up marrying this guy, and he didn't drink at this time. He took me to Minnesota, and he tried to control my drinking, and he started pouring it out, and I went crazy behind that. And 5 months into this marriage, I made this terrible mistake. I knew I made a terrible mistake, that I should have checked this guy out a little bit closer. That, I met his parents, and he didn't drink and didn't smoke, and they went to church on Sunday, and his mother didn't gossip, and she didn't screw around, and I'd absolutely nothing in common with this woman. And I thought, my God, I should have done something with this guy. And I'm still whining. I was going to drink in the manner I always wanted to come accustomed to. He was just going to take care of me. And 5 months into this marriage, I decided what I needed was a divorce, and I was going back to California to find that. He took me way up in Minnesota, in the horrible, horrible northern part of Minnesota, with 500 people in this little town. You can't hide there. All those people from Long Beach moved up there. The names were different, the faces were different, but they're all alcoholics. And so we came back to California, and I decided what I needed was a baby. Someone told me that when you have a baby, you automatically grow up. And they lied to me one more time, And I got pregnant, and 5 minutes after I'm pregnant, I no longer want to be pregnant. And the doctor put me on beer and wine. I said 1 glass of wine a day and 1 beer a day, and I was having 6 packs a day and half a gallon. And I spent that 9 months by the toilet bowl. With 5 of the girls in that apartment building that had babies, and all 5 of them went in and had their babies and came home, and they were all so happy. And I have to believe that they were normal because, and I knew that was going to happen for me. So I was going to be the same way they were. And I went in and I had my baby, and they put that baby in my arms, and I wanted to be a good mommy, and I wanted to feel all those things I've heard the mommies talk about here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that overwhelming feeling of love, and I was going to do all these wonderful things. I got an overwhelming feeling of responsibility, and what do we do now? And I took that baby home, and I tried to be a good mommy, and to this day I don't know what a good mommy is. But I want you to know that I got 3 of the finest children you'll ever want to meet. And I want to thank you one more time for giving me that gift. Because I'd like to take credit for it, but it wasn't for the women and the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, my kids wouldn't be doing as well as we are today. All 3 of my kids, none of them at this time, and I say at this time, not yet, none of my children are into alcohol or drugs. My oldest girl is 24 years of age. She just graduated a year ago from one of the finest universities in California, and she's home right now with me. And my boy is up in Maryland in the Army, is his choices, and the MPs, and he was home for a month. And Ronnie and I have always had a love-hate relationship, and things are working out with him and I. And it's because of people because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my youngest daughter is down in San Diego, and she can't decide whether she wants to be a doctor. You know, I mean, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to go off the streets or stay on them. You know, and she's trying to decide whether she wants to be a doctor. You know, I mean, these are big, heavy decisions. And I look at these kids and I wonder where the hell they came from, you know. And I could have missed it all. You know, I could have missed it all. And because of you and Alcoholics Anonymous. But it wasn't that way in my early sobriety. And I don't ever want to forget that either. I got a good relationship with my kids today. I love my kids very, very much. But it wasn't that way when I first got here. And I had this little girl and I abused her. And I was into abuse. And I don't tell you that because I'm proud of it. I tell you that because I was real sick and if nothing else, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me that I can break the chains that was passed down from my grandmother to my mother, that was passed down from generation to generation. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I get the opportunity not to do that. I get to break that chain so it no longer will go on down to another generation. Now, some of the stuff will go down, but not all of it will go down because it's been put to a halt here at the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the next couple of years, I abused that little girl, and many nights my husband would have to take me off of her, and I would take off and I'd be gone for 10 days at a time. And I would call this man up and I'd say, "Do you straighten up and fly right?" I would come home because I couldn't take responsibility for me. And when I called Alcoholics Anonymous the second time, that man sat and he looked at me and he said, "You go ahead. You go ahead," he said. And he said, because you've never completed anything in your life. And that little girl was 22 months old, standing by the couch, and her little legs were all black and blue, and her little diapers were half off, and her eyes were sunken in her head. And you know, when I left on Thursday night to come here, I was real scattered, and I don't know what was going on. My psychic was kind of off, and I was kind of apprehensive and was scared, and a lot of feelings. I'm a real feeling person. And my daughter called me the next night. Last night she called me here at the hotel to make sure that I was okay and to let me know that she loved me. And she said, "I was really concerned about you, Mom. You were kind of scared or whatever was going on." I said, "I'm okay. I'm with people who love me, and I'm all right now. You know, I'll be fine." And it's just when you have to do something new and having to come to people that you don't know, and yet you know you. You see, I know you, and yet I don't know you, you know. I ended up with this little girl, and when I looked at her and that gal that came that wanted to be my friend, and that when I told you earlier in my story, and Carolyn came and she took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I sat by the door and I sat in my hands on June 16, 1968, and I shook all over. And the only thing I wanted from you that night was, please, stop my head from racing, take this terrible knot out of the pit of my gut, and make these shakes go away. You know, that's all I wanted. And you know, if that was all I was going to get here, I would have been cheated out of a whole lot. And the man stood up like I am tonight and he told me what I suffered from. And I never knew what I suffered from. He said that I suffered from a threefold disease. That I had an allergy to the body, coupled an obsession with the mind, and I was spiritually sick. And he told me there was a first drink that got me drunk, and I never knew it was the first drink that got me drunk. I always thought it was the fifth or the sixth drink that got me drunk. And he told me that I could get sober, and I could stay sober the same way I drank. Now I'm a daily drinker and a periodic drunk. And I left that meeting, and I want you to know that I wanted to drink. God, I wanted to drink. I wanted to drink more than anything in my life. I wanted to drink. Because you see, you hadn't done that thing that I wanted you to do. You hadn't stopped my head from racing. You hadn't taken that knot out of the pit of my gut. And I heard the man say, if you don't take the first drink, you won't get drunk. Because you see, I knew that if I had that drink, it would stop my head for a very brief time. It would take the knot out of the pit of my gut and would make those shakes go away. But I heard that man say, if you don't take that first drink, you won't have to get drunk. And I went to another meeting, and I went to a lot of meetings. And I still go to a lot of meetings. I probably make more meetings than most newcomers make today. Because I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous more than anything in my life. Because my life began 22 years ago when I came to you. And I had no idea what you had in mind for me. You know, when it talks about in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, beyond your wildest dreams, beyond my wildest dreams. It's been a journey, and it's a journey that it's been a lot of pain, it's been a lot of sorrow, it's been a lot of joy. Probably a lot more joy than sorrow when you're in that joy part of it. And I ended up, when I had another baby, I had a baby boy, and I was 9 months sober, and I wanted to be a good mommy. And I wasn't a good mommy, and I very quickly abused that little boy, and I abused that husband, and I abused that little girl. And that sponsor was coming over on a daily basis. That woman that had 5 children that was always at my door. Always there. You know, always Lois would show up when I needed Lois to show up. And I had another baby, a baby girl, and that little girl, as I just told you, was down in San Diego, and she did not get the abuse the other kids got. And it shows in her, it really shows in her and her personality, and she's really a neat kid. She really is. And so are my other two children, you know. They're really neat people. I ended up, I tell you this time in my life simply because this is for a turn for me. And if you're new and you're going through some changes and you're in a period of 2.5, 3 years sober, I want you to know, just don't drink. Just don't drink. Because it'll pass. Just around the corner, there is an absolute miracle if you just can hold on. And when I was 2.5, almost 3 years sober, I beat my son. I beat him. And I beat him, and I beat him till his eyes were back in his head, because I couldn't deal with it no more. And someone came to my door, and they were 10 miles away from home, and he came to my door, and he took that baby away from me, and he said, you call somebody right now. And I called Mary Lee, and Mary Lee came and got me, and she took me to a meeting. And I went into that meeting, and I asked her to help me, because you see, I was worse now. I'd almost 3 years of sobriety than I was when I was brand new in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because now I'm feeling, and now I don't know what to do with it. Now everything is just, I just can't cope. I can't, I'm pacing, and I can't function, and I'm getting sicker, and I can't do this, and I need something, and the only thing I knew was I wasn't to drink, or take a pill, or run. And if I was going to run, I was going to run in the right direction. I was to run to a meeting. And I went in and said, please, somebody help me. Because on page 83 and 84 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you talk about no matter how far down the scales you've gone, you can see how your experience can benefit others. And you also tell me that fewer people would leave me, and I would intuitively know how to handle situations. You promised me all these things, and I'm not getting any of these things. It hurt me so bad. And I asked you to help me, and somebody said something, and I threw a chair down, and I ran out of that meeting. And a lady came out after me. Her name was Edna. And I mention Edna. Every podium I get to, I mention Edna. Edna grabbed a hold of me. And I know today why I didn't drive a car. I know today why Edna was there for me. And I couldn't cry when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I could not cry. A guy held me one night while another one punched my face. And he wanted me to cry. And I told him to go ahead and kill me. Because I wasn't going to cry. Because I had no more tears left. All the tears were gone. I was cold inside. And there's a guy in my home group, and his name was Walt Stiles, and Walt's gone today. And Walt was one of those people that learned to love unconditionally. And I was one of the people that he loved unconditionally, him and his wife Millie, that had taken me into their home and had treated me like one of their own children. And Walt would get to the podium. He was a great big man. And Walt would get up here, and he would cry. And I would sit out there, and the hair would stand on my neck, and I'd say, why does he cry? Because to me, tears was a sign of weakness. And I didn't want to be weak no more. I had no more tears. And Edna grabbed a hold of me, and I started crying. I laid in Edna's arms, and I cried, and I cried. And I thought I was never going to stop crying. And Edna held me, and I want you to know that I know today why we had tears. Because today I know the tears are really the cleansing of my soul. I want you to know that when I came to you 22 years ago, that I suffered very deeply from a very bad soul sickness. I was so sick spiritually. And sometimes I still can get sick spiritually. But I know there's a solution here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And Edna took me to Orange County Psycho. No, I didn't stay at Orange County Psycho. And I want you to know that Edna gave me life. Edna, in Edna's arms that night, I was reborn. And it talks about that some of us have felt that we were reborn, and I was reborn in Edna's arms. Edna was 9 years sober, and 3 months after Edna gave me life, Edna chose to commit suicide. And to this day, I don't know why Edna chose to commit suicide, but Edna gave me life. And I ended up, and I'm not here to give you a plug for psychiatrists, but I ended up in a group of women who were child abusers. And I was to find that I ran from that too because they threatened to take my babies away from me. And even if I did beat them, I didn't want them taken away from me. And I ended up with a doctor who wanted to help me. And he told me, I went to this man for 2.5 years, and I really believe for me that I would not be standing before you tonight if it hadn't been for Alcoholics Anonymous and this man. I really believe that, and a God of my understanding. This man told me because, you see, I got in touch with something within me that I never thought was ever possible. I know today that when the old timers in Alcoholics Anonymous says there are those who know and those who don't know. And I want you to know I'm one of those that do know. I do know where my source of power comes from. I do know where it is. And I know where it is for me. And it's inside of me. And this man told me that I wanted somebody to love me. And there's little Al-Anon gal that took me out there. She'd take me out there once a week. And I said there wasn't anybody that loved me. Now, Lois had told me on a daily basis that I was a child of God and God loved me. Lois had told me on a daily basis that she loved me and I couldn't hear it. I'm one of those that believes we're here when we're ready to hear and we see when we're ready to see. And I left that meeting. He said, that doctor, and he said, Annie, there's got to be somebody. And I said, there isn't anybody. Absolutely nobody. He said, what about those people in AA? I said, those people in AA tolerate me because the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. And God only knows they know I have a desire to stop drinking. And he said, Annie, there's got to be somebody. And I went home and I called Lois. And I whispered in the phone to Lois and I said, Lois, do you love me? She said, Annie, I love you so much. And it came true. I heard it for the first time. I'd like to tell you that I was able to love my kids from that moment on. And it wouldn't be true. I had to be loved an awful lot before I could ever feel that feeling for me. The surrender prayer says that we accept the things we cannot change and courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I accepted I didn't know that emotion called love that you talked about here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to touch my kids, and I didn't abuse them as much. And today I can love my kids and hold my kids, and the hair doesn't stand on my arms, and I'm not pushing them away. And you gave me that gift. And a gal came into the program, and nobody ever asked me to be their sponsor. Nobody. Old-timers used to take those newcomers and move them away from me. They were afraid I was going to contaminate them. You know, they'd say, come over here, honey. Annie's very sick. And so little gal came into the program and asked me to be her sponsor. And I was 5 years sober, and I told her I would share with her what I found here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I told her, this little gal came into a meeting one night, and she had used a lot of LSD and a lot of drugs. And she sat by the door, and she was hallucinating. She was 6 weeks clean and sober. And I want you to know that it was a long walk from here to that doorway to that little girl. And I walked over to that doorway to that little girl, and I took her out of that meeting. And I went into the bathroom with that little girl, and I sat on the floor with her, and I rocked her like a baby in my arms. And she looked at me with the bluest eyes I've ever seen in anybody, and she said, Annie, you love me so much. And I felt love for the first time. I had 3 children. I had 2 after I got sober. They put in my arms, and I never felt this from my kids. And the tears ran down my face. It was like electricity going through my body. And tears ran down my face, and I looked at her, and I said, God, Cindy, I love you so much. I felt love for the first time for another human being. And through that little girl, I'm one of those that believes it's not so much what I can give you, it's what God wants me to learn through you. And through that little girl, I've been able to love an awful lot of people here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want you to know that I'm one of those that believes there's only 2 kinds of alcoholics, male and female. I need the male in my life as much as I need the female in my life. Because I've got an awful lot of men in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Some of you have been my father, some of you are my brother, and some of you have just been my friend. And everything I know today I've learned from the women here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been home to Ireland several times, and there's been several deaths in my family. My dad died in 81, and my sister died in 83, and my brother died 4 months later. My mother is still in Ireland, and my family is still over there, and it's still a lot of alcoholism, a lot of drinking. When I was 2.5 years sober, I went home to Ireland. My father went to hit me with a poker because I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. 11 years sober, I went home again to Ireland looking for something from this man. I wanted something from him. I want you to know that I had been given this to me 1,000 times here in Alcoholics Anonymous, from the people that I have met, from the Walt Stiles and the Don Brunos, and some of the people that have come in my journey, along the journey for me. But when I was 11 years sober, I wanted something. I wanted something desperately. I wanted this man to look at me and say that I was doing okay and that he loved me very much. And we were home, he called us in the bedroom, and he told us he hated every one of us. That every one of us was a terrible, terrible mistake. And every one of us should have been drowned at that birth. And my brothers reached for a drink. I'd like to tell you I come from priests and nuns. I don't. I come from alcoholics. And they reached for a drink, and I stood there, and I tuned into the word mistake. All my life, I thought I was a mistake. All my life, I felt I was a terrible, terrible mistake. Until I came to you, and through the years, you told me I was not a mistake. That God does not make no mistake. And I'm not a mistake today, and I don't ever want to be a mistake again. I read a lot today, and I read a lot of self-help books, and I want you to know the old-timers told me years and years and years ago that everything I need to know is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I had to find out that for myself. And everything I need to know is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There isn't anything in that big book that the self-help books can help me with. They can give me a lot of information, but all I need to know is in that big book. But I do read a lot of different books, and I read one book for meditation, and it's called Gabon, the Prophet. And in there, there's one line in there that says that our children come through us, they're not of us. And you see, my children came through me, they're not of me. I can no more live in their world than they can live in my world. And you see, I came through the people I came through, but I'm not of those people. I'm of the people of Alcoholics Anonymous. You are the people. You're the ones that have always walked the extra mile with me. You're the ones that sat and held my hand when nobody else would sit and hold my hand. You're the ones that seen an Annie that nobody else could possibly see. And you pulled her out. And she walks proud with dignity today. Because she is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're here tonight and you get 1/4 of what I have found, God, wish I could give you to you. I really do. I wish I could give you what I got here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to thank you one more time for all the stuff you've given me. I love each and every one of you. God bless each and every one of you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.